could you give us an overview of what you mean by the term narrative apologetics?
I mean that one of the best ways of doing apologetics is to tell stories. And the key point I'm making is this is not just saying, hey, stories work, let's use them. It's saying there's some deep grounding in scripture and in theology for using narratives in the first place. So the book really is saying, look, here is why narratives are so important, and then it moves on more practically and says, here's how we can use them. So this book, in many ways, is inviting its readers to develop their own use of stories in doing apologetics.
And why is it that you think that stories matter? Why are stories important in apologetics?
Well, first of all, the Bible uses stories a lot, and that's very important. But I think one of the problems is that many traditional approaches to apologetics rely on arguments, which may be very helpful, but they don't capture the imagination. And if you like, telling stories is a way of engaging with the imagination, of drawing people in and making them wonder, hey, could this story change my story? That's a great way of doing apologetics.
That's interesting. Could this story change my story? Here, there's. It seems like this is a practical or persuasive. It's an attempt to persuade people, and it doesn't. It's not seeking so much to prove truth in sort of an evidential way. It seems that those would be almost. There are two separate methods. And, the facts themselves don't necessarily persuade people, or it doesn't persuade them to action. Some facts can be very simple and straightforward, but it doesn't sort of lead the question, so what, or how do I live my life now? And you talk a little bit about that in your book. So in your first chapter, you talk about the meta-narrative of Christianity and how this is important. Could you elaborate a little bit on what you mean? What is a meta-narrative, and how does that help the Christian worldview to move forward in people's minds and lives?
Well, a meta-narrative is really a big story. If you like, it's the big story that lies behind all the individual stories we find in Scripture. And it means that there's a coherence to Scripture. It's not just disconnected bits of narrative. There is a bigger story that lies behind these individual stories. And so what I'm saying in this book is that grasping, getting hold of this big story is a really great way of deepening your own faith, but also beginning to do apologetics. And one of the points I'd like to make in response to what you just said, which is very interesting, is that, there's a so what question here, isn't there? Okay, there's a fact, but does that fact affect me? When you tell the story of faith, you're saying, look, I have been changed by this. My personal story has been changed by the Christian faith, and that means it really is able to change people's lives, and hence, by implication, it could change the lives of those who are listening to my story. So it's a very interesting way of trying to do apologetics, which appeals to the imagination, but is deeply rooted in this big story we find in Scripture.
Hi there, my name is Kurt Jiris. I'm an evangelical theologian, and I've come to realize that Bart Ehrman is correct.